welcome everybody. Welcome to another of our digital infrastructure investor interviews. Today we are talking with Kenny Gunderman, who is president and CEO of Uniti. Kenny is up in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm down here in Austin, Texas. So Kenny, let's jump straight in. The first question is the easy one. Who are you guys? What do you guys do?
Great. Good morning, Ian. It's nice to be with you. Uniti is a publicly traded REIT. We focus on mission critical communications infrastructure with a focus on fiber. We're big believers in fiber being really the critical ingredient to all future broadband delivery. And we also believe there's a long runway in fiber and really just no competing technologies out there or delivery mechanisms out there that can compete in terms of speed, reliability, and latency. So big believers in it. We have a very valuable portfolio of real estate today. So we have 125,000 route miles of fiber around the country, which rivals any of the fiber networks out there. I mean, we're one of the top 5 owners of fiber in the country. Roughly 3,000 small cells and growing. So we're one of the larger independent providers of small cells. And we've got a macro tower business. And we think that all of those sort of edge delivery mechanisms like towers and small cells and fiber to the home, those things are all complementary to our fiber network. We're also building probably more fiber or as much fiber as anyone in the country, building dense metro fiber. We're building long haul fiber where it makes sense. And we're even now building fiber to the home in a big way. So we're building a lot of very valuable fiber. And thirdly, our economics are very indicative of a true mission critical infrastructure REIT. So 97, 98% recurring revenue, very low churn, 0.3% churn. Average tenure of almost 9 years, 9 billion of contractual revenue, very high margins, 70-75% EBITDA margins, and 30% capital intensity, and the majority of that is success based. So we very much like our economics, like our business, and think the trajectory and the tailwinds are very strong.
Okay, good. So you and I are talking here. It's the end of December 2020, which has been an interesting year. So let's get this one out of the way. What have you seen as an impact from COVID on your customers, obviously enterprise and carriers as well? You've got a pretty big infrastructure there. So what's the impact been?
Yeah, it's almost become cliche to say this, but COVID really has revalidated the value of our infrastructure and the value of our business, because I think fiber has just really been a critical component of keeping all of us connected during these trying times. Now, that's not to say that we haven't dealt with what I view as timing issues, like some of our installs being delayed because you just can't get on a customer prem, or the trajectory of our enterprise bookings, for example, has probably been lower than what it would have been. We're still growing at 10-12% a year on enterprise, but that's probably less than what it would have been had it not been for COVID, because we have seen some enterprise customers who are less willing to switch providers in this environment, maybe because they're not in their business right now, or maybe because that's one less thing they want to worry about. But I view those as timing issues, and so the benefits, and I hate to say the benefits of COVID, but the benefits of this have far outweighed those timing issues. So our really bandwidth intensive customers, like the healthcare providers, the schools, government entities, even military bases, certainly our wireless customers have been more bandwidth hogs in this environment, and really that's an acceleration that's a result of the acceleration of the virtualization of our culture. Video conferencing like we're doing here today, as opposed to doing this in person, or virtual learning, telemedicine, those types of things are all things that were on the horizon and on the come, but have really just been accelerated because of this, and frankly I think are here to stay. So all of those things have really been positives for the business.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, every time I have a doctor's appointment now, it's a virtual doctor's appointment. I've worked from home for 20 years anyway, so this is, but I'm not getting on a plane anymore. I'm doing a lot more of these types of things. And I agree. I think it's brought everything but forward 3 to 5 years in terms of what would have been happening. It just happened in 3 months. So,
3 months, right?
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit. In your Q3 earnings, you announced a strategic, and I'll get this right, an OpCo, PropCo. I like that description with Everstream. So what are the details of this deal? And I think part of this includes, if I read it right, part of the sale of part of your New England operations, if that's correct, right?
Yeah, there's really two parts to the deal. One, a big part of our thrust over the past couple of years has been to focus more and more on passive revenue versus active revenue. Passive revenue being dark fiber revenue, where you're really just providing access to the real estate, versus active revenue, where you're managing lit services and providing active customer interaction. And so in the Northeast, we had a lot of lit services revenue, roughly $20 million of lit services revenue. And we sold that lit service revenue to Everstream, and we got a nice multiple on that. And so we've sold that revenue, and we've replaced it effectively with what is the second part of the deal, which is we're providing Everstream access to our fiber in the Northeast to help them serve those lit services customers. And so we didn't sell the fiber, we didn't sell the actual infrastructure, we just sold the operations, thus the OpCo term. But the access to the fiber is really the core part of our business. We're selling to Everstream 20-year access, the term, dark fiber IRUs, across roughly 10,000 route miles of fiber in the Northeast. And effectively, when you net through all of it, we've increased our contract value from roughly 100 million to about 200 million of return. We've increased our margins from roughly 70% on that revenue to about 100%. Dark fiber revenue is pretty high margin. We've extended the term, average remaining term, from roughly 4 years to about 20 years now on that, on those IRUs. And so that's much more in line with where our business, our core business, is and is going. And effectively, we've still retained a lot of fiber capacity in the Northeast. So we still have additional lease up capacity on fiber in the Northeast. So we're very excited about the transaction. And by the way, I think it's a really good transaction for Everstream too, because they are, as you know, an effective operator in the Northeast, and in the Midwest. That's their footprint. And so this is a way for us to get those customers closer to a provider in the Northeast that has boots on the ground.
Right. And I think also around the same time you announced you were doing more dark fiber services. I think you announced 31,000 route miles in, I think it was 35 states. So is this part of the same strategy here? Is that where it's going?
That's right. Yeah, good observation, and right in line with that. In fact, we acquired a lot of new fiber in a recent deal with Windstream, one of our customers, roughly 35,000 route miles of fiber. And a big part of this Everstream deal is that we're leasing a lot of that newly acquired fiber to Everstream in part of this deal. And so it's, for us, one of the most exciting parts of the deal is that we're validating the lease up model of that recently acquired fiber. And there's a lot more to come, but this is the first indication of the value proposition of that recently acquired fiber.
Right. So you say there's more to come, more fiber to come, or more lease up?
Both, but I would inverse the order. What I meant was lease up, so a lot more lease up to come on that network. But as you know our story. We're building a lot of new fiber, and we're also acquisitive. We have been acquisitive in the past and plan to be in the future. So there's probably more fiber to come in that way as well.
Yeah. Well, you jumped to my next question. Actually, is we're seeing that there's a lot of money coming into digital infrastructure, data center, small cell tower, fiber. As we talked about at the beginning, there's a lot of demand here. So do you look at this as an opportunity to build or buy? You've mentioned both here. So is there one strategy or both strategies, or how do you view it?
Yeah, great question. It's both. We believe in the optionality to pursue either, right? Because at different times it's more economical to build, at different times it's more economical to buy.
Mhm.
And so we have a very good, robust M&A business. It's really what has created our business today. And we expect to continue pursuing acquisitions in the future. And that could be companies, all full operating companies that we roll into our operating business, or it may just be portfolios of assets, which is really probably more preferred from our perspective. So buying the fiber and rolling that into our business. And we've proven the ability to buy those assets and businesses at attractive multiples. So your point is spot on. There's a ton of capital out there chasing these assets
Mhm.
and paying premium multiples for these assets, which is terrific. I mean, we like that because it validates our business. But we've proven the ability to acquire assets at lower multiples because of the proprietary nature of our funnel. But despite that, I think in this environment today, the ability to build fiber at attractive anchor yields and then lease up that fiber actually is probably a better value proposition for us, because when you think about it, we're building most of our fiber at anchor yields of 7, 8, 9%, which that's roughly a inverse of it's a 12 and a half times multiple, 12 and a half times cash flow multiple. And infrastructure funds are paying 15 to 20 times cash flow multiples for fiber businesses. So we're building fiber at multiples that are at a discount to what the private market is paying for those. And then as we lease up that fiber, you're driving those yields higher and those blended multiples even lower. So the economics of the build to us are very attractive, especially as we execute on our lease up strategy.
Right. And as you said at the beginning as well, it doesn't appear that we're going to have a decline in demand here. I think we've seen a permanent shift in demand for bandwidth from enterprise carriers. It doesn't take much. Not everybody's going to run back to the office. People will go back for 3-4 days a week, but they're still going to work from home and have that flexibility. So I think we're going to see that demand, so building fiber, you may be busy for a few years doing that. So.
We certainly think so. As I said at the outset, we think the runway for fiber is long. We don't see the end of it, frankly, and there is no competing technology out there to replace it. Maybe at the last mile, so that we talk about mobile broadband, we talk about 5G, we talk about fixed wireless, and those are things that in areas and spots are a better and more economical last mile mechanism to either replace or supplement fiber. But even there, those are suboptimal from a reliability and a speed perspective. And regardless, all of that last mile technology feeds into a core fiber network, as you know. I mean, the backbone, the real core, 80-90% of the infrastructure investment required to enable all of that last mile delivery is fiber. And so we just think the runway is tremendous. And I've said this many times, we don't have a demand problem in our industry or in our business. The demand is out there. It's just a question of prioritizing and capital.
Right. Right. So you also amended your revolving credit facility recently. So what were the changes there, and what's the impact on the operations that we've been discussing?
Yeah, good observations. So we extended the maturity of our revolver, and very happy with that. We've effectively extended the maturity by several years. We upsized the revolver from roughly 420 million to 500 million, reduced the blended pricing by roughly 75 basis points, and loosened some of the covenants and increase some of the basket sizes. So these are all big complicated agreements, as you know, but effectively we've improved the terms and the pricing in our favor across the board. And we also provided ourselves flexibility to do some things that we hadn't had in the past, like pursue securitizations, which we're excited about. But net, this provides a great really a liquidity safety net for us. It's undrawn at this point, and will be for the foreseeable future, and look forward to using that to continue growing our business.
Yeah. Yeah. So switch gears a little bit to towards towers. I think you recently closed the deal with Melody for the Uniti Towers business.
Yeah.
And I think you retained, if I read correctly, 10% of the new company, which they renamed to be Harmony Towers with an I. Thought was pretty creative. So, and then it also said that Uniti and Harmony were going to collaborate on integrated solutions for the operators. So how's this going to work? What developments have been there? You know, and finally, are the operators coming and asking for a combined tower, small cell, and fiber infrastructure from you?
Yeah, great question. And back to your question about buy versus build, it sort of dovetails into this topic as well, because several years ago, we didn't have a tower business, and we entered the tower business by building our own business as opposed to going off and trying to buy a bunch of towers. Because as you know, in the private market, people are paying 30 to 35 times cash flow for towers. That's pretty darn expensive for Uniti. So we took the approach of building that business from scratch. So we negotiated an MLA with AT&T, which happened to be a big important customer of ours on the fiber and small cell side. And so our pitch to AT&T effectively was, hey, let's bundle these three things together. We're a core vendor to you in these other categories, and so adding towers is synergistic for both of us. And I think they agreed with that. And so effectively, we negotiated that MLA, which led to us building hundreds of towers over a very short period of time at attractive initial anchor yields. And so we then monetized a lot of those towers last year to Melody at a 35 times multiple. So we built them at a very attractive multiple, and we sold them in the private market at an attractive multiple. So it demonstrates the value of being smart with the build strategy versus buy. But also, I think with if we hadn't had the fiber and small cell capability, it's unlikely that we would have been able to get that MLA with AT&T to build the towers. And so to your question about bundling that effectively with carriers, I would say, and we're still in the tower business, by the way, so we have the 10% ownership, but we also have towers separately. I would say it's more of a subjective benefit with the carriers. I think carriers, they like vendor diversity, as you know, but they also don't want dozens of vendors. And so I think having some consolidation of product and especially infrastructure product across a handful of vendors as opposed to dozens and dozens of those is beneficial to the carriers, especially because there's scale benefit in dealing with fewer vendors, especially when you've got multiple infrastructure products to provide. So there is that subjective benefit, but if you break that down to individual towers, there are very few towers where we own the actual tower and the fiber into the tower. And so that is still something that's being developed, and that's something that other providers like Crown Castle, for example, are developing. And when you analogize that to small cells, for example, we have lots of small cells that are on the edge of our fiber, and more of those every day, but macro towers not as much. But I do think that's an opportunity going forward.
Right. And I think with small cells, it's kind of like fiber is needed more there. Right, a tower, you know, is a bigger piece of infrastructure. Obviously, it's the real estate, but there's multiple carriers in there. With small cell, they're very specific to where they're put. They've got a very specific need. They've probably got a high bandwidth demand. So tying those with fiber seems to make more sense. You agree?
I think that's right. And I think, you know, for macro towers, to your point, if unless it's an anchor tower, there's probably already fiber there from an existing provider. And so there may be one or two or three fiber options. Whereas with small cells, given the unique nature of those, at this point, there's really usually one fiber provider only.
Right. So from a competitive point of view, what are you seeing? Is it I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about fiber and towers, and you mentioned a couple of the players already. So, what are you seeing from your perspective, from Unity's perspective?
It's competitive. I mean, I think I think the biggest competitive threat that we see and feel is what you referenced earlier. It's all the capital out there chasing this industry. It's infrastructure money, it's non-traditional private equity, it's even in some cases public equity, because I think people recognize what I said at the outset. There's a long runway of demand on fiber, and it's good, steady economics underlying that investment, and that's an appealing investment these days for a lot of reasons. So there's a lot of capital chasing it, which tends to mean you got to stay disciplined, or you can be pulled into bad deals, because in order to get into this industry, a lot of times you need an anchor order with a wireless carrier, or you need an anchor order with one of the hyperscalers or something like that. And if we as an existing provider chase those types of deals and try to be competitive with every single new entrant, we can really lose our discipline. So, but if you set that aside, I think being an existing provider with a core existing fiber network in critical markets, with a core proven ability to build fiber and operate it, you really have a leg up on the competition, because it takes time and capital to build fiber, especially where the carriers and customers need it today. And so that time to market, if you're ahead of the competition by 12 to 24 months, that's very valuable, especially when the carriers are in an arms race themselves to get that good connectivity out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very excited about our network and where it is. We focus on tier 2 and tier 3 markets, which by definition are less competitive. And so the new entrants coming into those markets, it's even harder to do that. So back to what we were saying earlier, we don't have a demand problem, and I don't even really consider us to have a competitive problem. It's really more just our ability to prioritize and getting the capital into those priorities.
Right. So we're about to go into 2021 here. I think a lot of people will be very happy to hear that. It's been an interesting year. So this is a variation on a question we've asked before. It usually goes either, who's your favorite child? Fiber, tower, small cell. But we could say, well, what are your top priorities? So, and that's the first part of the question. The second part is, what keeps you up at night? What are your worries that you think, some you have control over, some you don't, but what are you worried about the next few years that could come back and hurt us if we're not careful? So favorite child and major worries.
Yeah, so favorite child's easy. Fiber's our favorite child. I mean, we love small cells and we love macro towers. We love fiber to the home. We love even fixed wireless. We do a little bit of that. So we like those last mile enablement systems, but the real core ingredient to broadband is fiber. So that's our favorite child. And so priorities for us are just execute on our business. Find those good anchor customers and then lease up those networks and put them in good markets and then lease up those networks effectively. And also be opportunistic about acquiring new portfolios of fiber where we can, at good prices. What keeps us up at night? Our business is 97% wholesale. So our customers, we have fewer customers for the amount of revenue that we have. And so a big worry of mine is always, are our customers performing? So the underlying core trajectory and performance of our customers, because we can't really control that. You underwrite customers, you try to pick good customers, but you can't really control their performance. And so anything that's outside of our control makes us nervous, but you try to mitigate that through underwriting and mitigate that through putting good leases in place, long-term leases, and leasing to those customers mission critical infrastructure that they're going to need. So in our case, Windstream's a big customer, for example, and they've had challenges. And so that keeps us up at night, but we feel very confident about the mission critical nature of the infrastructure we lease to them, and we certainly feel confident about the durability of the leases that we have in place.
Right. Well, great. Kenny, thanks very much. Great interview. For those watching, we've been chatting with Kenny Gunderman, who is President and CEO of Uniti. Thanks very much.
Iain, thank you. Best of luck.